Welcome to the Mortgage Broker Podcast, where we explore everything related to mortgages and the home buying process. If you're a first-time buyer or a seasoned investor, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Vanessa, the Mortgage Broker. So, let's get to it. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today, I have a special guest, Jessica Pallas. And I'm so happy to have you back. We were sitting here just about this time last year, and a lot has changed in the previous year. If you wouldn't mind giving us some details about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me back. My name is Jessica Pallas. I'm the Special Events and Public Education Coordinator at Nova Vita. And yeah, it was almost 1 year to the day that we were talking about International Women's Day. And now we are back and we are doing our 2024 edition, and it's going to be an absolutely fantastic evening. And I'm so excited and delighted again to welcome you back as our presenting sponsor of the event.
Yeah.
It's International Women's Day is our biggest fundraiser of the year, and we couldn't do it without our sponsors, and community supporters like you make events like this happen and make them so magical for our participants. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you so much. I adore having you and Vanessa as our presenting sponsors. So
yeah, Erin and I, it was a quick yes for us again this year. It was like, okay, they've come back to us and said, you know, would you be interested? And it was like, it didn't feel right not to do it.
Yeah.
Especially because there's just so much that can be done in the community. And I love bringing people from other professions that I know have big hearts and are always looking for places to give as well. So yeah. It just feels like the right fit for myself, and I'll speak for Erin as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like such an excellent partnership and even marriage with what you guys do in terms of mortgages and real estate, and even looking at us and looking at, well, yes, we are a domestic violence shelter, but we're also a homeless shelter, and domestic violence and homelessness actually go hand in hand, much more than we would like to see. And just even being able to have those connections that you've brought with you, whether that's people that you brought to the event, or other sponsors, or prize donors, all of those people have actually been on this journey with us over the last year, and seeing them come back and seeing their positivity and just like their light has been just absolutely wonderful. So I really have you and Erin to thank for that. So I appreciate that.
Well, what people don't realize is that when they start working with Erin and I, they're stuck with us and that we will continue to hound them just as much as the people who are looking for the sponsorship. So it's just surrounding yourself with good people, right?
Yeah.
And people with big hearts.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much that can be and needs to be done in the community, and especially for domestic violence in Brantford. I know that one of your colleagues, they shared something just a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. I actually went to one of your annual meetings.
Yes.
And some of the statistics on there are just heart-wrenching. Yeah. It's like, this is happening in our community. Mm-hmm. Like, how do we... It's not just sponsorship dollars. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be the time. It's got to be the volunteers. It's got to be more that comes from the community.
Absolutely. And that's why I really appreciate even being able to have being able to come here today and have this platform with you. Most people see domestic violence still as something that gets swept under the rug. It's not a popular thing. It's not something that's being spotlighted or showcased, because it is still very much there's a lot of shame and guilt around it. Mm-hmm. So being able to even just talk about it on a platform like this, and being engaged with people who come to the events, that's where we're creating that awareness. That's where we're letting people know where they can go, who they can talk to, that things maybe that they're thinking are normal are not normal, where they can go for support and help. Platforms like this mean so much to us, because as much as my job is about, raising money and making sure that we have food on the table and, roof over our heads, mm-hmm. that's important. But one of the second most important part of my job is creating that public education, creating that awareness in our own community, especially with Brantford and really the terrifying stats that come from domestic violence in our community. And one of the things that really hit me this year as part of our Break the Silence on Domestic Violence campaign that happens in November, we do share a lot of like public education and awareness stats. And the year before, it was every 6 days a woman or girl is killed in Canada. And it actually got upped to every 48 hours this past year. So to go from 6 days to 48 hours, that's something that has stuck with me even just for these past couple of months, and has really created a sense of urgency within myself.
Can I ask when that statistic came out? Because the only number that I've known so far, until you just sharing that right now, which like is making me a little bit emotional, that's 3 times the amount of a number that was already so staggering.
Yes, exactly. Especially for someplace that we think of as a very progressive country and, you know, safe country, to have that be like, you know, every 48 hours in Canada. That's something that I don't think it made me emotional too. I want you to know that it made me emotional too.
That is
the stats.
I'm like speechless right now.
Yeah.
Like
trust me, it took me a couple of weeks, I think, when really pushing that out there.
Yeah.
But the stats came out last year, and that's where there's been so much incredible things that have happened this last year. We actually, there's been,
tell me the good stuff, please.
I promise there's good.
My heart can't handle the other stuff.
I promise there's good. So in the last provincially, organizations such as OAITH, which is the Ontario Association of Interval and Transitional Houses, and other organizations like that have been really pushing for the Canadian government to list domestic violence as an epidemic.
Right.
And that is something that they have been very hesitant to do on the government level. It's just not something that basically what that means is if they list it as an epidemic, that means that more funding will become available to combat these issues in our communities across Canada, across the province. But they've refused to do it. So one of the things that your local shelters have been doing is connecting with their local governments. And we've actually started to see huge numbers of municipalities list domestic violence as an epidemic and list it as something that needs to be worked against. And Brantford and the County of Brant. County Brant hasn't, I don't believe it's official yet, but it's going before council. Both of our communities have made the steps in order to do that, which is going to help increase funding and even just, again, increase the visibility of the issue and the work that we do in our community. Yeah. So that's something that you could that's a huge step for us. That is absolutely huge. Yeah. So it's something that I'm very proud of. I'm very proud of the incredible team that we have at Nova Vita. Like, they're the ones that are leading the charge on that. Yeah. And I just get an opportunity to talk about it. So
well, and I can say, like, being a volunteer and having sat in on meetings, also with, you know, being a sponsor or title sponsor last year and sponsoring some other things during the way. The whole team, you guys really care. Yeah. And you can, it shows through everything that you guys do and the amount of effort that you put into making the community aware. Yeah. Normally on my podcast, I sit here and I talk about mortgages all day because that's what I love to do. But it was really important to just highlight and focus the things that I am doing when I'm not behind my desk. Community involvement is so big, and I just wanted to leave the space for this organization to have a platform to speak, because you get to hear and see me enough. So it's Jess's turn. It's Nova Vita's turn.
Well, we appreciate that, and like I said, just knowing your understanding of the community and the way that real estate and mortgages work and the impacts and the things that are coming. Yeah. You have such a big understanding of the obstacles that are facing us and people who are in our shelter, and we're trying to get them affordable housing in the community.
Yeah.
And being able to, like, doing those workarounds and having to work the system, I just think that you have such a very clear eye on what we have to contend with, that I think it's just such a natural relationship that has evolved. So
Yeah, I mean, like, the landscape, it's changing, right? The dream of having the detached home with the white picket fence, it's less of a reality. There's a lot of, like, large condo buildings that are being built even around in our community. And this might be a little bit surprising, but Brantford is actually one of the municipalities that has kept up with the housing market demand. And we still don't have enough.
yeah.
Right? So when you look at other communities that are outside of Brantford, you know, there was some stuff that was brought forward where each municipality needed to agree to so many housing starts by 2030, I think it is.
Okay.
But the issue that they're facing now is who's going to do it? Secondary education, of course, it's very, very important, but so was the trades and so was apprenticing. And it became less popular, even though that there was quite a bit of government funding that went into it. There wasn't enough employers that were taking on apprentices. And so now we're faced with, we don't have journeymen, we don't have electricians, we don't have enough trades. So now we've got this bigger problem of who's going to do the work. The cost of building has not gone down. And the biggest disparity, I would say, between the cost of building a house and the housing prices having dropped 20%, the cost didn't go down. So in a lot of cases, even with new builds that have been done, that home isn't worth what it was when they first started. So we need the people to do the work, and then we need to somehow, the cost on building these units, or there's got to be some give somewhere between these two items alone. And then the next problem is the affordability to get into the house. Because we've just seen the rates increase so much in the last 18 months to 2 years, where 2 years ago I would have had no problem, you know, qualifying a 2-income family home, where that's getting increasingly more difficult. Like $100,000 in a family household, it doesn't even get you a $500,000 home anymore. Where 2 years ago, that would have been a walk in the park type file for me.
Yeah.
So when I say that the landscaping is changing a little bit, we're seeing a lot more rent to own. So that is now becoming more popular, and not only in the benefit of the person who is going to be selling the property, but there are more fair procedures that are put in place to protect the person who is going into that rent to own structure. And the other thing that we're seeing a lot of, more so in the GTA, but it's picking up popularity, is instead of buying a home with a spouse or relying on a second income from a family member, friends are going in and purchasing properties together so that they can get into the market, gain the equity that they need, and then hopefully be able to purchase something on their own in the future. And when I first not heard about it, but like when it was becoming more popular, I was like, I don't know, like, would you want to buy a property with someone that you don't necessarily know all that well? And then I thought, well, sometimes you buy property with family and you don't really like them, so I guess it could work.
Yeah.
It could work just the same. So,
or you're in a relationship with somebody.
Those are two things that are gaining a lot of popularity in terms of more lower income type families.
Yeah. That is incredibly outside the box thinking, given the current environment that we're in.
Yeah.
I actually hadn't heard of that, so that's incredible. Like you said, it's mostly in Toronto right now, but coming.
Yeah.
Wow. hope it
It's
comes here.
gaining some traction.
I hope it gains
You'll
a lot of
probably
traction.
see it on TikTok, maybe a podcast in the future. There's just, when there's a change that's made with the government of Canada, it's not about, oh, we can't do this anymore. It's about, how are we still going to make this happen?
Yeah.
Because the biggest dream of any Canadian is home ownership.
Yeah.
And that's one of those goals that seemingly is most important to most people that live in this country.
Yeah. Home means safety.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I equate it. And having a home as a house is so much a part of that feeling of safety and security. So
Yeah. So having worked with Nova Vita a little bit over the past couple of years, I understand that there is a program called transitional homing. What does that look like?
Absolutely. So it's our second stage transitional housing and support program. So when the main goal when people come into our shelter is to get them somewhere safe. So we are an emergency shelter, although I will say that the average stay in our shelter is 58 days, which I'm not sure about you, but that's not 58 days is no longer an emergency.
Right.
So that's where we're starting to see that backlog in terms of affordable housing or safe places to get to. So we actually have transitional housing on site. We have an eight unit space that actually is apartments that are that run as affordable housing for people who are transitioning out of the shelter and into the second stage transitional housing. And with that, we offer continued counseling, both for if there is a mom and a child. We do our children's youth services as well, and there's continuous wraparound support for the family. So being able to utilize the services at Nova Vita, playground, children's programs, all of that stuff is available to them. Now, in order to access our second stage transitional housing, they would need to be in the shelter in order to be transitioned over. But there are other opportunities within the community as well. But one thing I actually have a question for you on is if there was a family who is transitioning out of our second stage transitional and looking to get into home ownership or just be able to have a space on their own, what's something that you would suggest for them if they say were a single mom with a child? What are some advice? What things would you have them prepare before meeting with someone like you?
Well, I would actually recommend that they speak with someone like me, because then I would be able to kind of see what the situation is and then be able to better prepare them how to move forward. So for example, if I saw that there was a blip in their credit history, it makes sense with the timing with when they've been moving through this transitional process. What is the fastest way for them to increase their credit again? I would be talking to them about a down payment. What does that look like? Where is it coming from? We do have a program actually in Brantford. They open it once a year, and it once the funds are gone, but it's called the Be Home program. So if you have 5% to put down, they'll actually match the other 5%. There are some rules and regulations around that, like you can't just take the money and then sell the house the next year. But it is forgivable if you've lived in that home. I think it's 15 or 20 years. And then that amount actually becomes forgivable, and you do have the option of paying it out sooner if you were to refinance the property, but it would help with the initial down payment to try and get again into the housing market. It really just comes down to that whole okay, this is changing again, what can we do, how do we still make this happen? So the down payment would be a big one. The minimum for down payment was 5%. Anything over 500,000 is then it changes. And then full-time employment. Yeah, it's a tricky one, especially with what's happened in the last couple of years. I know there's lots of people who have more than one source of employment income, but just making sure that you've got that steady income stream coming in that is easily verifiable would be the next piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, you make it sound so easy. And
Well, I try to.
Yeah.
I mean, for something that is as complex as mortgage, I do try and speak in a language that most people can understand. I try to stay away from acronyms. I'm really bad for it sometimes, but I really try to make it as simple as possible because it doesn't need to be that scary as long as you're working with someone that you trust.
No, absolutely. I totally agree.
So the event for International Women's Day, I saw a number. How many tickets are sold?
We are actually, so we have 200 tickets to sell. We are at this very moment 82% sold. I am absolutely overwhelmed by the response yet again this year. Last year we sold out very quickly. I expect to sell out hopefully by the end of this week.
Yep.
I've had so many sponsors reach out and like being very proactive, like not even me asking. So I think that speaks to just the incredible event that we put on last year and people wanting to be involved again. New people are reaching out wanting to grab tickets. So I'm very, very happy. It's in terms of the nonprofit sector and raising money, it's not been easy, just as within your industry, it's not been easy. So being able to see this reaction just really fills my heart, and it means that people are caring and they want to be involved and they want to support us and they want to help women in their community on International Women's Day. And one of the great things about this event too is that we're actually celebrating this year 40 years of hope. It feels weird saying that we're celebrating 40 years in the community because I don't want to say that, like, you know, we've needed to be around for 40 years. Nobody wants a domestic violence shelter to be in need for 40 years, but my executive director, Natasha, she actually phrased it that we're not celebrating, we have been providing 40 years of hope in the community, and that's something to be proud of, which honestly, as soon as she reframed it like that, I'm like, you are so right. We have been providing 40 years of hope in this community and providing a space for people to feel safe. So
She's really good at turning a negative into a positive.
She's
some
fantastic.
of the things I heard her say, even like throughout the pandemic, which was a very scary time for the shelter, right?
Yes.
Some of the things that she would say, it's like, yeah, we've got this many more people coming into our community, but that's because they trust us. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Like I'm following what you're saying, but she just, she's such a positive individual.
Absolutely. And I can't imagine being led through that very, very difficult time with anyone else. She was like the feet on the ground and just really supporting everybody from our shelter workers to our second stage transitional housing workers to our court support workers to myself. Just wanting to feeling that support while we're providing support in the community. She was that for all of us.
So one thing I will say, and this is kudos to you, is I don't think that the community would be as supportive as they are if it wasn't so easy to work with you and Annie.
Thank you. That actually means a lot. Like Anne and I we see the value of our participants and our sponsors and our donors, and we want them to feel as good as they make us feel. So that's always been priority one for both of us, and I think that's why we work so well together in creating these spaces for people to engage with Nova Vita. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, you're more than welcome. More than welcome.
But the event is on March 6th, and it's going to be a fantastic evening. I'm so excited to have you guys there and be presenting, of course. And the ways that people can get involved, they can donate prizes. I'm not sure if there'll still be tickets left when this comes out. So, but there's all kinds of ways to support Nova Vita, even if it's not through International Women's Day. I encourage people to go to novavita.org/donate or even novavita.org/make-a-difference. There you can kind of see all the ways that you can support Nova Vita, whether that's hosting a third-party event, which actually you did last year, invited me to come and sell some raffle Crafting Courage
Oh, for
scarves,
the
which yes, for your open house, which actually you're displaying proudly right now. They can also participate in other events. We have our golf tournament coming up and a brand new event, which I don't want to talk about just yet, but it's coming in June of this year, so stay tuned
You
for
would
that.
do that to me.
I know I would. And they can donate, they can volunteer. We're always looking for volunteers, especially like at our reception desk or in different programs that we offer. Definitely connecting onto our website is the best way to figure out how you can work with Nova Vita and how we can support each other.
And you're still in need of volunteers.
Yes,
Always.
absolutely. Always in need of volunteers to do many different tasks, including sort through donations, answer phones, and we actually have a volunteer that does our baking for us. So she was a professional chef for a very long time. So it's been an excellent opportunity for her to utilize her skills and for our residents to get some incredible treats.
Yeah.
So.
And what are like the typical hours that somebody would need to provide, let's say a week, a month?
We're very flexible. I have volunteers that exclusively work at my events. So I have like 3 events throughout the year. So they only do those. Then I have volunteers that come in like 3 hours every week to do different things. So we work with your schedule, but the only thing that we ask for is a minimum 6-month commitment, just because there is a lot of training that has to be involved in working with our at-risk clients and whatnot. So we always want to make sure that everyone's trained and can handle anything that gets that we can throw at them. So yeah.
And this just popped into my head because I know last year the campaign was More Than a Bed. Is there a specific campaign this year for the 40 Years of Hope?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So thank you so much. I meant to talk about that, and I
I'll
totally
remind
forgot.
you.
Yeah,
as
thank
I'm
you.
Thinking of it.
We actually were taking a look at our very urgent needs this year, and last year we actually were able to do some renovations with our second stage transitional housing, which it's still ongoing because we had so many funds come in that night, far more than we were expecting, that it's allowed us to prolong the project and do even more than what we were expecting, which is fantastic.
That's awesome.
So this year we're actually focusing on our very very unseen services for youth. So this is where this actually is one of the things I think is very key in stopping the cycle of violence, and it goes really back to that education component of my position and the aim of Nova Vita. We actually have workers that go into schools, make presentations, and do counseling. We offer safety planning, all kinds of services for youth, and we want to be able to really pull people's attention to that work. It's actually one of our departments that doesn't have a specific budget per se. It's one of those things that is done off the side of our desks.
Okay.
I hate using that term, but like that's really like those are some of the most important things that we do, right? And being able to focus funds into that program so that we can provide more help, more hope, more healing for our youth in this community, teaching them what healthy relationships are, being able to do our Blossom training with them. So that's knowing how to support someone who is experiencing violence. Actually, while we're filming this in February is actually Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. So this month I'm actually sharing a lot of information on our social media about what healthy relationships look like, one of the misconceptions, of course, which we've talked about before, is that abuse isn't always physical. It can be emotional, it can be psychological, and our aim with that program is not only to teach what a healthy relationship is, but to understand what abuse is, what to look out for, and even to have your friends know what to look out for. So our services for youth is something that I really want to see grow, and I know that we can do that that night. It's important for all of us, I think.
Well, in that age group too, it's just such a confusing time.
Absolutely.
Right? So I don't want to say it's easy, but I'm going to use the word easy. It's easy to get wrapped up into something that you started out okay in the beginning, and then all of a sudden you're kind of in this mess and you don't know how to get out of it. So
absolutely. And being able to counsel at that age is very important, especially like if you have not seen a good model of a healthy relationship growing up. It's something that's not necessarily your fault. You've never known anything else. So this is all about education and generating awareness and giving individuals the tools they need to create healthy relationships and healthy communities and healthy families in the future. So we're all about stopping the cycle of violence, and being able to connect with our youth in the community, I think, is the very best way to do that.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
You do a lot, Jess. You do a lot.
No, my team,
Yes,
Nova
your
Vita
team.
does
Yes,
a lot.
yes.
I just get to sit here and talk with you.
Well, we're happy to have you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Where can we find you?
Novavita.org, or you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Novavita Brant. All of our information, especially upcoming events, all of that great stuff is all posted there.
Perfect. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on our next podcast.